Good morning again, Andover. Those were two great addresses. So let me add my welcome to our graduating students, their families and guests, our faculty and staff, faculty emeriti, and members of our Board of Trustees. We gather here on the Richard T. Greener Quad to celebrate the accomplishments of the class of 2022. Before I begin my remarks, I want to thank the class for playing a vital role in my own Andover education. You persevered through the arc of unforgiving pandemic, and you showed patience and grace as I came to know you in a remote fashion from my home office in Phelps House. I'm sure my remarks during Zoom all-school meeting were always absolutely riveting. You stood by me in this school, and you supported one another as we traverse unimaginable challenges. For all of this, I am deeply grateful. When I was at Grinnell College, one of the vice presidents, Jim Reich, who was a graduate of Andover, encouraged me to visit Andover because he knew that the so-called Iowa Band, the group of 11 Congregationalist ministers who founded numerous churches in Iowa along with Grinnell College, had all graduated from Andover Theological Seminary, which, as you know, shared a board and this campus with Phillips Academy for about 100 years. In preparation for that visit, I reread parts of a book-length account of the travails of the Iowa Band. A photograph in one of the books of an older white male minister with a long white beard stuck in my mind. And shortly after I arrived here with my family in the summer of 2020, that image morphed into another cartoon-like image, one of a group of distinguished bearded ministers catapulting the Iowa Band of enthusiastic, newly ordained ministers out to the Iowa Territory in 1843, followed by me, nearly 180 years later, landing in the middle of Greener Quad on Andover Hill. I envisioned it being like the opening scenes from the movie The Brother from Another Planet. While some of your parents may be familiar with this low-budget, uneven film from 1984, I would be surprised if any of you in the class of 2020 have heard of it, 22 have heard of it. So let me share some context. This film is about an alien from another planet who lands on Ellis Island long after it is closed as an entry point to immigrants. And this alien in the 80s is in the body of a young African-American man who has no idea where he is or what the customs of the planet are. The movie does a great job illustrating that sense of being totally new and not understanding anything. With all of its flaws as a film, it became a favorite film of mine from the first time I saw it when I was an internal medicine resident in Chicago. And the brother from another planet became the phrase that recurred in my mind as I made my way through my professional career. And I've had an unusual career, one theme of which might very well be repeatedly leaping into a new world, a new community, always with that feeling of being thrown. Now, I know there's a German philosophical concept of thrownness, but here I'm referring to something far simpler. That sensation of being thrown, of not knowing your bearings or the rules or the customs. When I found myself in unfamiliar places or new positions in the past, I've tried to use what I know and what I've experienced in other worlds to work hard, to dig in, to learn about the new world, and ultimately figure out how I can contribute. As my spouse Peter can confirm, though, I am known to complain vociferously about the discomforts and the missteps that are inevitable in this process. I finally concluded that at some level, I must like being thrown because of what follows, that satisfaction that comes from figuring something out. Now, that sense of thrownness is at the core of all learning, that process of moving from utter confusion, or at the very least, complete newness, to a state of being settled, having figured it out, with an eagerness to take on the next thing, to be thrown again. I'd be willing to bet that thrownness figures prominently into each of your Andover experiences. The process of helping you develop as educated people and global citizens is what we do especially well here at Andover. The diversity of our student body adds another rich dimension of thrownness. Sometimes that feeling of being thrown can result simply from the experience of interacting with someone from a different culture or country or class. Thrownness is what makes diversity so valuable in an education community. It results from both the experience of grappling with new ideas, but also from engaging with new types of people in every way. While working on Andover's Anti-Racism Task Force report, I stumbled upon an index that the Census Bureau uses to assess the diversity of a community. It's simply the probability that two people chosen at random from the community will be different. In this case, different race and ethnicity. And the higher the number, the more diverse the community. And there are other quantitative measures of diversity, but I like this one. It's simple. And being somewhat of a math geek, I had this number calculated for Andover. And of course, this being Andover, there's several ways to calculate this number, depending upon how you define difference. But our number for racial and ethnic difference, our diversity index in that context, is about 70%. So if you pull two students from our student population at random, there's a 70% chance they will be of different race and ethnicity. That's higher than our state, higher than our country, and I suspect higher than almost all of our peer groups. But we are simply ahead of where America will someday be. I think that says something important about this school, that we value difference as essential to generating great ideas and deep learning. In so many ways, all of you, the class of 22, have been thrown more than most classes. Being thrown revealed your capacity for empathy and leadership, and it strengthened your character. Those who started here as ninth graders arrived in 2018 to jam-packed theater productions and all-school meetings that filled Cochran Chapel. You experienced the full thrust of Andover and our vibrant community, only to return in the spring of 2020 and navigate an unprecedented 18 months of disruption and uncertainty. Being thrown meant pivoting to online and hybrid learning. It meant going without a traditional sports season and instead perhaps caring for loved ones at home. It meant rethinking how to stage a musical performance when your pianist might be in one state and your violinist in another time zone and your teacher here in Andover. This reinvention of teaching and learning became synonymous with the resilience you demonstrated as we returned to campus. Still, the return carried its own challenges. You found yourself being thrown again, this time into a community and an environment that was both familiar and different. New COVID variants emerged and positivity rates increased, then fell, and then increased again. I'm sure you never want to take another COVID test overseen by your house counselor or eat from another green container in your life, although Thursday's green container dinner was lovely. Thrownness can happen in many ways. Sometimes we find ourselves thrown because some force, a teacher or a friend or something bigger like the pandemic, knocks us off our stance. Other times we choose to be thrown, to step into a new world, perhaps being the first person in your family to go to college, or perhaps studying abroad to immerse yourself in a new language and culture. One of our jobs here at Andover has been to help you learn by introducing you over and over to that feeling of thrownness, by introducing you to a wide array of knowledge, but also by challenging you to explore new areas of athletics or performance or art or leadership or political and community engagement. If we have succeeded, you have experienced countless times a version of what that alien brother from another planet experiences in that film. But our job was not just to throw you. It was also to guide you through the discomfort, to help you embrace that off-balance feeling as an indication of something new and potentially wonderful, to gain the sense of satisfaction of going forward in spite of that feeling. And that is what learning is about at Andover. Now, of course, sometimes when we are thrown, it's because we should be thrown, because the place we find ourselves is wrong for whatever reason, and we need to get out of that situation. I'm sure every student here can think of a time when you had that feeling, that you were off balance, that you were about to be somewhere where you should not belong, or do something that you should not do because it was counter to your values or it might cause harm. It can be hard to discern between the good thrownness that helps you grow and the bad thrownness that leads you down the wrong path. All I can say is that it takes time to learn to separate the two, and even when you're up in years, you can stumble. A small thing happened to me last week that's been on my mind, that I've been ruminating over for days. I was returning from a run home to pick up something at Phelps House, and two students were playing Frisbee on the great lawn. It was one of those perfect late spring days. After I had passed them, one of them shouted out, "Dr. Kington, do you want to play Frisbee with us?" Now, in that second I took to open my mind and speak, all I could think of was my legendary clumsiness at almost all things related to sports. So I said, "Thanks, but I'm hopeless with Frisbee, bad hand-eye coordination, but thanks anyway." By the time I reached my office, I was already thinking, what a wuss. But my response was deeply ingrained in me. I was one of 4 boys, and I was without a doubt the absolute least skilled in all things athletic. I chastised myself that day for not even being willing to endure what would no doubt be a state of thrownness from ineptitude just to connect with 2 boys who just wanted to share their enjoyment of a few minutes on the great lawn. So to those 2 students, ask me again, and I'm going to say yes next time. Now, there was a time in my life when every year I would throw myself into one thing that I knew would make me uncomfortable. For example, I'm a barely passable swimmer. I don't feel entirely comfortable in deep water in spite of spending a lot of time on islands. So one year when I was in medical school, I made myself take several swimming courses in an attempt to become more comfortable in the water. Another year, I explored religion, which simply had not been a part of my life since leaving my childhood home, and I ended up finally being confirmed in the Episcopal Church and even joining the church vestry. Each time, whether swimming or exploring religion or horseback riding, a story for another time, I began with something that I knew would throw me off balance. And I've let that practice drift away, but I'm determined to start it again, and maybe I'll join an ultimate Frisbee team. Now, sometimes being thrown does not result in a clear outcome. For me, literature has been a great source of thrownness, but the genre that I've found most unsettling is poetry, and I don't know what it is, but when I read most poetry, my mind keeps trying to push the words into the frame of complete sentences and paragraphs with clear meaning, and it just results in frustration. Still, I have not given up on poetry. I have a shelf of books at home that I hope might make a difference as I continue to throw myself into that discomfort. So why would any of us knowingly agree to a circumstance that will mean being thrown? For me, I believe it's a combination of persistent curiosity and hope. Curiosity about whatever had the power to knock me off balance. But I think more importantly, hope, that resilience gained from being thrown, from exploring connections between what I know in my world at that moment, from learning entirely new ways of learning and understanding the world, will ultimately enrich my mind and my life. Thrownness is one of the primary reasons why I encourage each of you to explore the world outside of whatever world you have known best in your life. Few experiences are more meaningful than landing in an entirely new environment. And we often learn the most not from taking formal tours or reading books or regurgitating facts, but by simply existing and interacting with the new place in routine ways that may help us to see even routine activities in new ways. Now, if any of you know this film, The Brother from Another Planet, which is available for $3.99 on Amazon Prime, you will learn that one of the ways that the alien man connects with this new world is the discovery that he has special talents. In particular, he's able to repair broken electronic games with the touch of his hand. You, the class of 22, must go out into this world knowing that each of you also has special talents. Of course, each of you arrived with special talents, but I know that your Andover education has helped you to discover new talents and refine existing ones. You have refined your ability to think and discern and learn and empathize and create and collaborate and many more skills beyond those. You have already proven to have a strong response to being thrown. As you become newly minted Andover alumni, how does that sound, Andover alumni? I leave you with 2 requests. First, I ask that you seek out the sensation of being thrown, knowing that it can often lead to something better than accepting a more comfortable alternative. And second, I ask that you do the work to maintain a sense of curiosity and hope and optimism about the people and about the world as you throw yourself into your next adventure. Good luck and Godspeed.